Big basketball podcast. Let's do it. Luka to the Lakers. Everything that I've been able to piece together and why I think one part of this I will never be okay with. We've got Will Cain, politics and pick and roll. Probably more just on Luka. De'Aaron Fox also on the move to San Antonio, so a few on that. Ceruti and I run through the no list of Luka trades and the Lakers' future with Jovan Buha and life advice. On Saturday night, Luka was traded to the Lakers. Bill Simmons, Rob Mahoney, and I, we all did a emergency pod because this deserved an emergency pod. It's one of those trades. It's the biggest trade of my NBA lifetime. It's the kind of trade or news that I'll remember exactly where I was. Saturday night, not very wild. Back home, laying in bed, Hall catch fire on TV. Excited about it. And then you see the first piece of news start traveling in. Your phone starts blowing up. Is this real? What are you talking about, man? And then you see Shams tweet that Luka Doncic has been traded to the Lakers for Anthony Davis. And I, like everybody else, is like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And Shams had to say, this is not fake. Like, I haven't been hacked. And Bobby Marks had to be like, he's not hacked. That's how unbelievable this trade was. Call Bill. Bill's like, I guess we do an emergency pod. I'm like, yeah, I think you have to for this one. And we did it. We sorted through it. And I was hoping by Monday morning of this taping that I would have more info for you. So let's just try to work through it a little bit because the league is still shocked by all of this. So I think it still works today. My reaction was like everybody else. Why would you trade someone like Luka Doncic at 25 years old? He's already made 5 All-NBA first teams by 25. His range is probably at best the second best player in the world. At worst, the third best player in the world. I think he's better than SGA. I'm sure there could be an argument. So let's say the worst you could rank Luka today is the 4th best player in the world at 25 years old. Guys like this do not get traded. And again, it's the most stunning trade of my lifetime. So since Saturday night, I've probably, just because people can't stop talking about this, maybe half the teams, someone for half the teams in the league, because you keep trying to put this together. And now I don't know that there's much more of a mystery. It's like, have you heard from anyone that knew that he was available? Did you hear from any team where Nico just kicked the tires and like, hey, what would you do in theory if we were willing to trade Luka Doncic? Because a lot of times this is how all this stuff happens. These guys talk to each other nonstop. They know which front offices like their players, which players that they don't like, who could be available, who might not be available. It's just a big run of months and months of dudes on phones talking about hypotheticals. They do it in their own front offices where they rank all of the players and then they revisit those rankings and they argue over the rankings just because they want to know like how their group sees the value around the league in comparison to maybe how another team would see the value, right? So there was speculation that there was this one other mystery team that was at least asked about, what they could do for Luka in a trade. I don't know who that team is. And Tim McMahon does a great job. ESPN.com covers basketball nationally, but very plugged in with the Mavs. Said in his piece, quote, they did not discuss potential Davis trades with any franchise other than the Lakers. So that feels like maybe there's this one, we'll hear something later on, like, oh, they actually kind of called, but like, who knows? Because apparently this wasn't like a 2-day thing. It goes all the way back to like prior to January 7th. And then Nico and Rob Pelinka met up January 7th when they were both in Los Angeles. So if there's one constant that I can, which you already know, but the constant is that Nico Harrison loves Anthony Davis. Loves him. And I get it. 80 is awesome. He's 31, 32 in March. He's been great again this year. All NBA second team last year. I voted him as an all-star starter this season. Last season, though, was his first year at 70 games since 2017-18. He wants to be a power forward. Cool. He's a lot better and more valuable as a center. If you start trying to map out what the rotation will be, maybe how they would close playoff games, I do worry a little bit of like the power forward center, non-stretching the floor, 2 bigs Cleveland thing that I kind of worry about at times, even though Mobley's just been lighting it up. So you understand what I'm saying? Like the 2 bigs that don't really stretch the floor, maybe it's just about defense and providing two incredible interior defenders behind your perimeter guys. But now you're moving PJ Washington to the 3, where he's probably better as a 4. And then I don't know what you do with Clay, who's been starting, because he probably shouldn't be guarding 2 guards. So I guess you could say this is where the Max Christie piece comes in, and maybe they close with the Max Christie defense. He's been pretty good lately. And then you have Kyrie at the 1. I thought this Dallas team with Luka was a pretty good team. OKC on, to me, it's a toss-up if everybody were right and everybody were healthy. That's a big if, because Kyrie's got a back issue. PJ's got a knee issue. Gafford, missed a game recently, not that big of a deal. Lively's out indefinitely with a stress fracture. So maybe it works, or maybe they never get fully healthy, and we can't judge Dallas on this trade anyway, right? I think all of those possibilities are on the table at this point. I also worry a little bit about the dynamic of Kyrie as the true 1. I think he loves the role. I think he likes being mic'd up. I think he likes it kind of being his team, despite saying all the right things and playing some really good basketball and being drama-free here for 2 years. But the weird part about Kyrie's playoff run last year is that when it was great, it was just universally praised as great. And when it was bad, it didn't really matter because Luka was there. Where Kyrie could have bad stretches and big playoff moments that just kind of became hidden because he was the 2 and not the 1, and the 1 gets the brunt of all that criticism. When you're the 1 and your team doesn't win in the playoffs in the NBA, it's like, oh, what's wrong with this guy? And Kyrie's able to avoid a lot of that stuff because Luka was there. Now he won't. And to be honest with you, it's not going to be because AD can overshadow Kyrie as the focus of attention here, because AD is kind of the same way. As great as he is, he's a deferential personality, and he probably works better with somebody else who's perceived more as the face of a franchise, a popularity superstar like a LeBron James, despite the fact, look, the last 2 years, Anthony Davis was the better basketball player between the two guys. For the Lakers, it's a franchise reset, and it should be. Who cares about 2025? I don't like their defense on the perimeter right now. Who cares? Because once Luka becomes available to you, you trade for Luka and you worry about the rest of it later. Some have said the Lakers got sick of LeBron and Klutch. Okay. I'll hear you out. But, you were so sick of Klutch and LeBron that you gave LeBron a 2-year, $100 million extension with a player option. You drafted his son. You hired another new coach, this time it being JJ Redick. And I don't want to be dismissive of JJ by saying, oh, you hired his podcast co-host, because I love the JJ Redick hire. And again, I'm biased. I like JJ Redick. But recent history tells us you weren't that sick of him. So this week you got sick of him? You got sick of AD? You got sick of LeBron? You're going to take some power back? No. You can say those things to people and be like, there's starting to get a little old here inside the building. No, Luka was available. And that's why you did this. Because play it out on the other side. What if everybody got along? What if the Lakers and the front office and ownership and everybody was like, we love Klutch. It's awesome. No complaints. You would have turned this offer down? Of course not. You would have traded for Luka because you can't believe Luka's available and available only to you. Why would Dallas do this? Sure, we could talk about his conditioning, his injury history. Fine. We could talk about the contract. He was eligible for 5 years, $348 million Supermax. He's not eligible for that now that he's been traded. There's a way, if he were to opt out after 10 years in, he can make some of that money back. Did they maybe offer him less? Did they kick the tires on like, hey, since we can pay you more than everybody else, could we potentially do some of that kind of stuff? Did Luka say that he didn't want to sign it? Did he hint at not wanting to be there? Like, none of that's really come out. Right? Did new ownership think this contract could be potentially a bad deal? Man, it's not like any of these new owners are broke. And if the first thing you would want to do, like the transition of power from Cuban to the new group, like, yeah, let's get rid of Luka. I can't believe a new ownership group would even sign off on something like this. I still can't believe Nico didn't talk to other teams. I can't believe he brought up that he was worried about other teams loading up for Luka. Because if there's one thing that I keep reminding you about, like, think of all of the players, be like, you know who the Heat are going after. Like, let them worry about their cap space that doesn't really work out. Run through the rest of this year. Call other teams. See potentially what could happen this summer. Dallas had to be so sick of him, man. They had to be so sick of him. And Nico had some telling quotes in his availability. He said, quote, as we turn the page, I think it's important to know that Jason Kidd and I, we've had a vision and the culture that we want to create since we've been here. The players that we're bringing in, we believe, exemplify that. We think defense wins championships, and we're bringing in one of the best two-way players in the league. That translates as we're really sick of Luka. And maybe it's a bit like that relationship. Like, they broke up. It's like, you're not living with that other person. You don't know what it's like. Maybe all of us on the outside who are not living with Luka don't know what it's like. But here's what I do know. It's not great basketball business to get sick of guys like Luka Doncic at 25 years old. Nico also said, quote, I don't do anything scary when he's talking about transactions. You traded for Kyrie 2 years ago. That was the single most available scary transaction to make in the league at the time. But it worked. And I think that's another important thing if we're talking about Nico here, because there's a lot of quotes where I'm like, God, they must have just hated Luka. People around the league think Nico's terrific. They think this front office is terrific. It's been nothing but praise and a consistent deal of Nico loves Anthony Davis, and the relationship keeps going back. I get it, but I still can't believe they didn't at least call other teams. There is a kind of like, as everybody agrees, like, I can't believe this trade happened. I can't believe this is the way that was executed. Why would you do this? You don't want to trade a guy like Luka. This is a generational talent. You've helped out the Lakers, all these different things. I guess there's a version of this that ends up on like some page, or it's like, look at all these idiots getting this thing wrong. Where if everybody's healthy and the Mavs make some kind of run and say they get to the NBA Finals, say or they win the whole thing, and it's like, look at you morons. Nico was right. You're like, yeah, maybe. But you know what they never do? You know how like when they'll show a playoff panel, it's a pregame show, and you show all the studio hosts, you show all their picks, they put up the little helmet. It's like, man, everybody picked that team on Monday night, or everybody picked that team for the playoff game, and everybody got it wrong, and then everybody posted like morons. You know what they never do? They never post it when everybody picks it right. It's just like, yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Texans in the playoffs. Chiefs. You never see that one posted. Everyone's still stunned. How do you not call Boston and at least make them say no about Tatum? How do you not call Milwaukee and be like, is there any part of this where it makes sense for you to move off of it? I mean, those are a little bit more difficult because they're guys that are in-house and they've won championships with already. I don't know how you don't call Ant. I don't know how you don't call Houston, San Antonio in the picks, but maybe if you're Dallas, you're like, look, we're not in the pick business right now. With the way the rest of the roster shapes out, we're not doing a reset. We think we're right back in the hunt here in the West. So I don't want to hear about all of Houston and San Antonio's potential picks. I guess you would look at it and say, well, Booker isn't as good of a fit as AD is with this roster. I just don't understand how you don't call. Because usually these negotiations all start with an absurd request, something so tilted in your favor as a general manager, it's almost embarrassing to make that offer. This trade started with the other GM laughing, with Pelinka being like, wait, are you serious? I also thought it was hilarious hearing about how Pelinka was able to keep this quiet. You're like, no shit, really? He didn't want to tell other people that Luka was for real available? Because I've heard some people in the media talk about how, like, well, once it gets out, then Dallas loses their leverage. You don't lose leverage when you're potentially trading Luka Doncic. The market increases your leverage. So even if there's an outcome from a team success standpoint where months from now, or maybe a year and a half from now, we'll be looking at this going, man, remember when everybody felt this way and crushed this thing? And now look at the Mavs. Yeah, I do think that that is a potential scenario. But what I'll never defend is the execution. To talk to one team, that part of this will forever be indefensible. This is exciting. I hate having him on, perhaps his most depressed weekend of his fandom, but it's Will Cain, who, by the way, you can see weekdays every single day on Fox News, The Will Cain Show, 4 p.m. Eastern. Will, it's good to see you again, man.
What is up, Russillo? This is interesting. This is fun. I appreciate the invitation. I am honored. I'm flattered. No, I'm excited to be with you again, man. What's up?
All right. So before we get to this Luka stuff, this tariff stuff is wild.
Yeah, man.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right. Look, I went through the Open and we've talked about this already. I did the pod. I just wanted your perspective as a lifelong Texan, lifelong Mavs fan. I know that you've been super into it. It's been a couple days. Luka is gone. How do you feel?
Just so bummed. Just so crestfallen. I mean, I feel awful, and it doesn't get better. I was at breakfast with some of my buddies this morning, and they're like, why do you care so much? I'm like, what happened to you? When did you lose your humanity and your passion? This is what I sign up for, man. Like, we all have the way that we come through, loving sports. Mine is through the prism of fandom, Russillo, and it is fandom through the channels that were a birthright that I was born to. That's the Texas Longhorns, Dallas Cowboys, Texas Rangers, Dallas Stars, and Dallas Mavericks. And that's the way it has been. And I never made a choice. And to see one of my loves gutted, 100% gutted, the spirit and soul ripped out of it, it just feels like a real loss of hope.
Wow, that was intense and efficient. What bothers you the most?
Okay, what bothers me the most is that whoever made this decision, and I always respect that, even when we were together, you talked about I have sources, meaning you have sources, Russillo. You don't do this through, like I do, the prism of the fan. But on this one, I do know some things. And what I have been told and led to believe is this was really heavily, if not exclusively, driven by Nico. So, I don't want to focus all my fire on Nico Harrison because I don't think it can be completely true that he does a decision like this. We know that there had to be sign off, but as far as driving the decision, what has me most upset is there is no understanding from whoever made this decision, we'll presume Nico Harrison, that the role Luka played in the psyche in the city of Dallas, and it's singular, and it can't be replaced. And I posted this on X yesterday. Like, it's the type of thing that a championship doesn't just replace. So if I even accept the most, superficial rationales that, this makes us a better basketball team. Charles Barkley says it makes Dallas perhaps the second best team in the West. If I even cared about the X's and O's of that right now, and it worked out in the most optimistic manner possible, and they win a championship this year, I don't think it's enough. I don't think it replaces having an iconic figure who's not just the face of the franchise, but I think, the face of the league. And if not the face of the league now, with some certainty, the face of the league within 5 years. And to rip that out, who's a homegrown dude that we brought over, that had doubt around him. I debated Stephen A. and Max on whether or not they should take DeAndre, or whether or not DeAndre Ayton's a better pick. Or I don't even remember the name of the dude that Sacramento picked second or third.
From Bagley.
That was the type of debate we were having. And it was like, no. We got Luka. We pulled off a heist somehow. The basketball gods gave us this unicorn, and he proved to be everything that you ever wanted. And he just represented more. Honestly, Russillo, he represented more than championships. And I will say this is like the Mavs trading Dirk in 2006. And if the Mavs had won the championship in 07 and 08 without Dirk, it wouldn't mean as much as winning in 2011 with Dirk.
Yeah, you touched on a bunch of good things there. the ownership part of this, because none of this stuff happens. Like the number of times that you'll hear about something and then, like a week later, somebody's like, wow, the owner, did or didn't want to do this. Like there's just so many deals that either happen because the owner's like behind it, or a deal that doesn't happen because ultimately everybody in the basketball side, the coaches, the front office are like, we want to do this. The owner goes, you know what? We're not doing that. And that's it. Like ultimately you work for the owner, even if we believe there's some sort of fake hierarchy of like the GM can tell the guy that actually owns the team that writes his checks that he is going to do something that he doesn't want to do. Maybe early on with owners, and maybe that's the lesson in this. Maybe that the new ownership part of this, even though that whole Cuban timeline has been so strange, where it was, wait, you sold the team, but you get to keep running it. Like that doesn't really ever happen. And I don't know that that's even necessarily true, or maybe they were being nice to Cuban for the year or whatever, but it's the opposite of what a new ownership group would want to do in their own backyard. You would think even if Nico's convinced them, hey, he doesn't get it and he's going to age fast and we don't want to pay him all of this money and all these things, I would think most ownership groups in this situation be like, you know what we can't do though, is we can't trade this guy right now. We can't do this because every sales guy is motherfucking the organization right now. All the PR people, like all the community stuff and the money part of it, all the local product here suffers in such a way, like their approval rating, which again, all that stuff can be totally bullshit. And if they have a deep playoff run, maybe it doesn't really matter. I think I saw something where the Instagram page for the Mavs lost hundreds of thousands of followers. I don't know if that was real or not, but the thing that influences so many basketball decisions, the dynamic that I kind of despise, is usually the kind of thing, though, that would prevent an organization from doing something like this because it is so immediately unpopular.
Okay, so from the ownership side of this equation, I'm going to tell you what I think I understand, and that is this. This is an organization, the new ownership, that allows its managers to run their businesses. Whether or not that's the casino business, the hospitality business, and maybe now the basketball business. This is also, I think, something that has taken everyone, shockingly, Russillo, I'm telling you this is true, taking everyone by surprise. They did not expect this level of backlash. One more just to do away with the conspiracy theory. The Mavericks are not moving to Las Vegas. Like this ownership group, by the way, is largely divested from Las Vegas. They don't own the Venetian. They don't own casinos in Las Vegas. And trust me when I tell you that there is a belief widespread that Texas, forget Dallas versus Vegas isn't even a comp. No business owner goes, I think I'm moving from Dallas to Vegas. No, that's not a comparable market decision. But the idea of Texas is a big time investment. You will see gambling legalized in Texas. You will see casinos built in Texas. You will see the Mavericks somehow tied in to all of those things. So that's not happening. I don't think there's any way this is tied to, moving the Mavericks to Vegas. And the NBA was doing them a solid, get Luka to LA and help out our ratings, and you can move the franchise to Vegas. No, that's not real. Russillo, people name their dog Luka here. Like there's not a comp, man. Here's the best I did. I tried to think about this because, me on my thing saying, a championship doesn't heal this wound. I don't know, just 2 or 3 championships? Well, the closest comp I can come up with, besides the hypothetical of them trading Dirk, is Jerry Jones firing Tom Landry in 1988 into 1989. That was a big deal. Like, there are old head, and you and I are old heads now, but Cowboy fans who never forgave Jerry Jones, despite the dynasty of the 90s, just did not forgive him for doing that to an icon. Now, the difference is Tom Landry was really down. Like, the Cowboys were not good in those 2 or 3 years leading up to Jones's purchase of them. Luka is like right now entering his prime, and they just came back from the NBA Finals. So even that comp falls short. I don't know how, from a PR perspective, you recover. And maybe I'm wrong. And I guess I hope I'm wrong. Like, maybe 3 championships. And I know this sounds ridiculous. Maybe 2 championships heals this. But I don't want 2 championships right now. You know what I want? I want Luka to be a Dallas Maverick.
The other thing that I have a hard time with is, like, you want to say Luka, like, oh, he's gotten all these stats, whatever. Like, there's so many other players that have huge numbers and could potentially obtain all these individual accolades. There's going to be a couple guys that make the Hall of Fame where I go, like, cool. The fact that you had this finals run just a couple seasons after the Western Conference Finals run, where that team wasn't that good, all right? But they knocked off a really good Phoenix team that had just been to the finals. You look at the Phoenix Suns during that regular season, and for whatever reason, they just took their souls. They take their souls in that Game 7. They had no chance against the Warriors. I was going through the other offensive options there, and you're like, Luka dragged this team. And I do think there are conference finals appearances that can be fool's gold and maybe gets a team thinking about themselves in a way that they shouldn't be thinking about themselves. We're like, hey, you guys actually aren't that close, and you're not as good as you think you are, even though it says you're one of the Final Four teams still standing. But Luka getting to the finals, again, with a different roster, that quickly after getting to that Western Conference Finals appearance, like, tells me that you actually are close. And again, this isn't some empty stat guy. This isn't just the most talented guy in the league, that even with his deficiencies on defense, there wasn't enough happening negatively with his game that put a ceiling on who you were, where I think there's like 5 to 7 other guys in the league where I'm like, oh, cool, he had 30 again. Yeah, I mean, let me know when they're out of the play-in. And that's the part with Nico where it's very clear they were completely over him. And Windhorst, when he did his rant last year during the playoffs, that was like vicious. He made a point today where he's like, you know what's crazy about that? He's like, nobody, or maybe I just saw the clip again. He's like, nobody from Dallas called me to defend their guy. So I think what we're putting together here is that whatever the day-to-day Luka dynamic was, it was still so egregious to Nico and the rest of the group that they were willing to do something like this, where on the outside you're going, you're complaining about this dude as the face of your franchise because you actually have team success. Granted, not the title, but like real runs in recent seasons to point to as this guy is not somebody that gets in the way of a team's success despite his flaws.
So what's wild about that, and he's completely validated today, but is the idea that Nico Harrison is bigger than Luka Doncic. Clearly he is bigger than Luka Doncic because he did this. And if that's because ownership believes in him, so much, or this is their style of management to allow people to make decisions, it's shocking, whatever justification Nico runs out, that it's what sold. Let's do a couple of them. So the defense thing, that's total nonsense. And I know a lot of fans are going to sit there and go, Will, I've watched him get destroyed on I don't care. They were number 3 in the league in defense last year after the trade deadline. After they got Gafford in Washington, they were 3rd in defense. Does that make them perfect and Luka's not a liability on defense in the finals? No. By the way, Boston was better than Dallas. That's the end of that story. I don't care about
Dallas. It was also a bad basketball matchup, too, with like the way they would execute. So, sorry, I interrupted, but keep going.
No, but the point is that doesn't cause you to navel gaze. That's not a long look in the mirror. You ran up against a really good basketball team in Boston. So I don't buy the defense thing whatsoever. The conditioning thing, here's the only way. I loved what you said with Bill this weekend. You said, I repeated it at breakfast. I don't care if he's smoking cigarettes while bringing the ball up the court. He's Luka Doncic. I mean, that's perfect. I don't care about his conditioning right now. Now, I do think they worry about his long-term, how he wears long-term. I do think they think, okay, we're 1 year away from the Supermax, $70 million a year. He is clearly not that dedicated to getting in peak physical condition. How does that play? I don't know. 30 is still 5 years away. So for me, I'm like, it'll play fine. I don't care about what he is at 30. But are they worried he's not going to be good at 27, 28? And you're sitting on this deal? I'm curious what you think about this, Russillo, because one of the only things I could come up with, and I posted on X, is, you love the NBA. A lot of people think that I won't because of my politics, but I love the NBA. Specifically, I love the Mavericks. So I don't have a vested interest. I don't have a political desire to kick the NBA in the crotch. But I am capable of reading facts. And the ratings are not good. Quite honestly, Russillo, I rate higher at 4 than the NBA does in prime time. And
whoa, early shots fired.
They may beat me in the demo, but I'm going to be honest on that as well. Not by that much. So the point is the ratings are not good for the NBA. Okay, all the people go, well, kids consume the NBA different, TikTok. You don't monetize social media in the same way you monetize a TV contract. So you have to ask, at some point, is there a correction in the TV revenue market? Like the NHL had a reset in the mid-2000s when their salaries got out of control. And you say, okay, well, if that's coming for the NBA, are these Supermax deals at $70 million a year unsustainable if the current economics of the NBA don't continue? Maybe they do continue, maybe they don't. ESPN has an endless appetite for live sports programming. So I don't know, but that's the only thing I can come up with. But even at that, Russillo, this ownership group is loaded. Like they've got a lot of money. So I don't think they're a penny pinching ownership group worried about the black and red of a financial spreadsheet into the future.
I have more work to do on the ratings thing because I think at times the way the ratings cycle gets treated is there'll be this downturn, right? And then that downturn is supposed to tell you the future, right?
Yeah.
Because remember when the NFL had a dip, it was, well, it's concussions, right? Concussions were going to end football and no kids were ever going to play football again. I think you and I were doing shows back then. And I was like, have any of you ever been to the South? Okay. Like, I think people are still going to play football. And then it was because it was Kaepernick, right? And then it was because it started to become like a bit of a political divide where if you were on the right, you wanted to see the ratings go down a little bit because it kind of justified some of your political beliefs. And I just felt like that kind of falls to this like polling of one stuff that'll happen. Be like, oh, my uncle doesn't watch it anymore.
Both sides,
like, okay.
Though. You remember both sides because you remember the debate about, oh, the NBA is going to replace the NFL. It became a proxy culture debate. But all I'm saying
is that was another Cuban thing. That was another Cuban thing. Cuban was trying to say that.
Yeah, he drove that. So did First Take.
All right. So like when we look at the ratings part of it, I need a little bit more data, but ultimately, because I am working on something on this, I'm not done yet. And it sounds like as an NBA guy, I can potentially be pushing it back against the idea that there's declining ratings. But here's what we do know. Any declining rating or any declining rating forecast is irrelevant to the bigger business deals because you could have, as long as you have the live rights programming, you have all of these games, you can say, all right, year to year, like this is where we're at, go back 10 years, this is where we're at. And like, okay, why would you invest this? They just did the TV deal. So to me, the TV deal and the ratings and the fact that it's been renewed at triple again, and it was beyond the projections because there was a long time we were like, why are some of these teams changing hands? Oh no, is the TV deal coming in way lower than they thought? Or some of these guys deciding to get out now because this is the decline. The franchise acquisition bubble is finally starting to happen. And then none of that happened because the TV deal came in massive. So the reason I think it's important to go through all this stuff is, okay, fine. Maybe it is a declining product in the way that we equate like what is successful and what is not successful based on, I think, at times, some very outdated and domestic television numbers. But I can't sit here and say that anybody's wrong that's looking at it that way. The point is $350 million to Luka is irrelevant because the money's already backed in. In 4 years from now of whatever that extension would have been, Luka's making less. The same way the quarterback renewal cycle happens. We're like, I can't believe Jared Goff is making all of this money. Look at that guaranteed money. And then 3 years later, you're like, that contract isn't even that bad anymore. At 25, whatever your concerns are about Luka, there's no financial conditioning argument that I would hear because here's the thing, then you could just trade him. So I don't know if you want to follow up on that because I still have a couple other questions.
All I would say on that is I think ultimately I'm in the same place as you. I'm spitballing, trying to find a rationale that's for something that is on its face unjustifiable and irrational. The money side of it, and you're right. Well, first of all, the league's primary revenue source is TV contracts. So if viewership goes down, you would think at some point the value of those TV contracts would go down, but it hasn't happened to your point. They keep going up.
Yeah.
And that's in part because TV itself, cable is declining, and live sports and to some extent news are the last holdouts. And so kind of their land grab becomes more valuable as everything else goes down. You do wonder at some point, does it catch up even to those highest points on the mountain? But again, this is why I don't disagree with what you're saying. Luka's $350 million deal would be within the scope of a current TV rights deal. So you're not going to pay bad for it. You've already got that revenue baked in. So I'm with you. Again, it's going to take me back to, I think Nico, I'm going to let you take this where you want. It's clear that Nico saw Luka as two things. I think you're right. He saw him as a problem. Okay. I don't think everything was as hunky-dory behind the scenes as you'd want to believe. Whatever that means. How you manage a star, your relationships with stars, even Luka's relationship with other stars. I'm not suggesting there's anything bad there, but maybe I've been led to believe it's not as rosy as it always looks. And secondarily, then, Nico saw Luka as an asset, not as an icon. And there's a difference. And so that asset, he was willing to flip. And maybe he's right. Maybe they're now better on defense. And maybe they have a 2 to 3 year window where they're, the Mavericks aren't gone. They're going to be very competitive, presuming these 31-year-olds don't get injured. But the problem is he's not an asset. He's not just another player, even a very good one. He's an icon. And I don't think he's just an icon in Dallas. I think he is a league, and that's obvious now. Look, he's going to be the face of the league because he's a Laker even more now, and you just traded away the icon of the NBA.
Two things that we finish up here. What I cannot understand is if you were going to make him available, why you would make him available to only one team. And the answer to that, as I've talked to enough teams and I talked about in the open, is that Nico Harrison looked at Anthony Davis as like the guy he wanted more than everybody else. But it still does not justify, like, you couldn't get another pick. You couldn't figure out a way to, like, hey, I need just a little bit more. I need a sweetener here. I'm going to get destroyed. I'm trading this guy. Like, give me a little something here. If you had heard, I already know the answer to this, but if you had heard he had canvassed the league for a couple weeks and we had the normal cycle of a Shams or a Windhorst up on TV going like, there are rumblings that Luka's available. Then we get like the 2-week runway to talk about all the different hypotheticals. Like, you almost get to like have an appetizer to that moment on Saturday night where you're bracing yourself for it. Like a content appetizer. If you had known that this wasn't just about one team he negotiated with, which I can't understand, would you feel better about it today?
Well, the one team thing feeds the conspiracy back to the ratings. Oh my God, we got to get ratings up. Make Luka a Laker. I don't generally believe. Well, do I believe in conspiracies? I'll let the audience decide whether or not I believe in conspiracies. You want to just do 30 minutes on that for a minute, Russillo? Should we just dig into a few?
We're going to make that a YouTube only.
Okay. All right. That's for subscribers.
Yeah. You have to really want this content.
I guess, like intellectually, like theoretically, yeah, that would have gone down easier. But in the end, I wouldn't have wanted, and that wouldn't have been any good either. Yeah. If you had said this is kind of personal to me. If you had said they have traded him to Milwaukee for Giannis, maybe I could get behind that eventually. Maybe. That is the one. Because I really like Giannis. I don't, there's nothing else. I don't care how many first-round picks. He's Luka Doncic.
Last thing. As we said at the beginning, we'll be on every day, Fox News, 4 Eastern. I was with you early in the ESPN days. Like, who's this fill-in? We've told the story before, like full head of hair. Shit, he's pretty smart. I think he's smarter than I am. And then we became friends and we did a bunch of shows together, and who knows, like things had gone a different way. Maybe we would have done shows together for a long time, but we both had goals. And, I'm looking at you realizing that you're reaching a goal, something you're like, am I one of these guys? Like, you have those moments you're like, could I potentially? And then once you decide like, yeah, I think I can be one of those guys. Well, you have now become one of those guys. What does this mean to you?
Well, I kind of know what you mean by I've become one of those guys. I mean, I'm not doing faux humility when I tell you I've never thought about it in that way. And I'll be personal with you and the audience. And you and I texted and I said, look, to do what we do, you have to have a combination of a couple of things, which is narcissism, insecurity, and ambition. but, um, but I of course am ambitious, and to have my name on a show and have my own hour on Fox News is incredibly flattering, and it's somewhat of a celebratory moment. But the real celebration for me is that I've been making a commute. Dude, I haven't unpacked my DOP kit for 9 years. That includes my time back to ESPN when I would go spend 2 or 3 nights in a hotel at the Homewood Suites in Bristol. I guess technically it's Southington, but I have lived out of a DOP kit for 9 years, except for the 1 year of COVID. And I moved back to Texas 5 years ago, where I'm from, and I live in Dallas, and this is my life, and this is where I'll die. I'm never moving, at least not as a primary residence. And to get to do this from Dallas is the real victory for me. That's what it is. They made my dreams come true when it comes to, I get to go to my son's Friday night football games. I'm not missing soccer games anymore. I'm not commuting to New York. That's it. Everything else, Russillo, is icing. And as for our friendship, stick around because maybe I'll put you in my cabinet.
Maybe you have bigger aspirations than I thought. Maybe I don't know. I might have to get some sort of hair update, some transplant.
I'm thinking Secretary of Commerce. That's where I'm leaning right now. Secretary of Commerce, Ryen Russillo.
I don't know. What does that guy do?
Something big. Tariffs?
Last question. What's the biggest difference between ESPN and Fox News?
God, you know what's interesting? This came up this weekend. I was at one of my kids' soccer games and somebody brought up hate and vitriol. And I was like, you know what, man? I've got pretty thick skin at this point. The most I ever got is not in politics and not at Fox. It's at ESPN. And that's by nature of a lot of things and topics and times that we were all going through from 16 to 20. But I think, what's the biggest difference? From an audience perspective, it's there's an alternative media to what I have to say on Fox, who will really, really nefariously cut what you have to say and recharacterize it, but you just let go. I'd let go of that. I had friends at ESPN. Everybody wants to think that I didn't, that everybody hated me. Maybe they did behind my back, not to my face. I had friends at ESPN. I loved my 5 years at ESPN. I loved working with you, talking. My favorite thing about what we do is when I have a relationship off camera. When the microphones go off, do we have more to say? Do we have more to hang out? Ceruti will testify this. Every commercial break, I went into the control room. So did you, and I remember this. And I'd hang out with the guys. Nuno, Bubba, Ceruti, we talked. I loved being with the fellas. I certainly had that at Fox, but now a lot of my connections have gone on to run the Secretary of Defense or the Department of Transportation. But it's been real similar at Fox. I have great relationships at both places, and that's my favorite thing. It's LeBron and D Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. I now know the value of working with your friends.
So maybe I should have asked this in a better way, because I think it's the headline of like, oh, what's the biggest difference? And I think that the difference, at least the way that you're treated, is that if somebody's watching you on Fox News, they want to watch you on Fox News. Where I felt
That's true.
And I even warned you against this, the role that you were being teed up on at ESPN,
right?
At First Take, I was like, hey, just be careful. Like, you can't go on and be this actually isn't racist guy every day of the week. Like, because then it becomes like, hey, because I just know how, because they did it to me one time. They were like, hey, this Yawkey Way thing, do you want to defend them keeping the name of the street Yawkey Way? I was like, no. I was like, I don't give a shit. I was like, why would I? And they were like, really? They're like, you're from Boston, the Yawkeys. I went, well, I'll go on. And then I was watching it happen and I was like, oh no. And then we talked about it a little bit, but you're so good on the show and it's this massive platform. So I think when the setup is, hey, we're going to roll out Will Cain for this, there's no way anybody's going to like you. There's no way anybody that's watching First Take regularly is going to be like, I like him. Okay. So I you know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying you have a 0 approval rating, but it's, you're digging yourself out of a hole at the start of every single segment, I think is. And maybe it looks like you still want to disagree with
my wife.
That's fine.
No, I don't. My wife used to tell me,
okay.
Hey, she used to say to me, why don't you start? Because, also there's the design of First Take, which is, the design is get to the disagreement. First Take
Right.
is not fake, except it does away with the pleasantries of normal conversation that you could call fake, that most of us do. So in other words, like, don't go, well, I see your point. Honestly, Max did too much of that, and that's why it didn't work for Max on First Take. I see your point. Get straight to the part where you don't see their point. My wife used to be like, why don't you just say, like, at the beginning of some of these really contentious conversations, I see your point, or I get that, and here's where I agree, and then go in. And I'm like, no, like, I'm going straight for the counterpunch to the nose right off the bat. I mean, because I do have a deep disagreement, and so we might as well get to it.
I actually like that. And I think that's why the show and the dynamic works. But I think the question I'd like a better answer on, because I didn't ask it the right way, is that, are there more similarities perhaps? Are there more similarities navigating the dynamic of becoming somebody who's a regular part of the television rotation? Is it just like every other place in TV?
I'm going to answer that two ways. You're going to find both unsatisfactory because I think I know what you want, but I don't think I can give it to you. I think I have a lot of self-awareness. I know you do. Boy, you think about this stuff a lot. You think about it too much. But I think about it a lot too. Like, how does this work? How did I do? Why did that not work? Which is good. It's like watching game tape of yourself, which I don't think you do either. I don't watch game tape, but I do think about what I said and how it played and these kind of things. But I don't change, Russillo. That's the problem.
I listened to, by the way, the other day, I mistakenly hit play on one of my own episodes, and it had been a really long time since I'd listened to myself do an entire show. So I was like, you know what? It's been a long time. Listen to the whole show. And then I got done and I went. I was like, I'm fucking awesome.
The funny thing is, I don't know if I believe that or not. It's hard sometimes with Russillo sarcasm. Was he super hard on himself, or was he super proud? The thing about it is, though, at the end of that, I know this sounds like I'm patting myself on my back, but I know myself at this point. I have one currency. One, it's authenticity. Believe it or not, I don't want to be the smartest dude. I just want to be real, and I want to be me. So I'm going to do that in both places, and that's the same, and that's just the way it is. Let the chips fall where they may. You're also asking me about something else. It's behind the scenes stuff. I was never more laid back, Russillo, than I have been. When I went to law school, Russillo, I stopped caring about grades. And it was the most liberating 3 years of my life, and I learned more. I just stopped. I didn't want a big law firm job. I wasn't trying to make $150,000 my first year out of law school. I didn't want that, so there was no point in me trying to be law review. So I didn't, and I learned so much. When I got to Fox, I have not, of course I'm ambitious, so I'm not going to pretend like I didn't have conversations or like, where is this leading and do I have a path? But I didn't angst about it. I was pretty laid back about, I'm doing this, I'm enjoying my job, we'll see where it goes. And there's a lot of reasons decisions are made, to your point. I don't know them all. And I was as surprised as anybody when this came down, but it really helped being laid back and not trying to white knuckle the steering wheel.
That ended up being a great answer, because I don't know if it's something where it is the surrounding area, not really nailing the terminology here, but you could say, like, is it the dynamic? Is it the setting? Is it the people? Or is it where you're at? And really the answer is usually like where you're at. Because for me, ESPN was an angst-filled experience. And is that specific to them? Or is that about your own security and kind of where you're at in your own head? And it's kind of mirrors your law school thing of like just the Zen moment of, all right, I'm not going to worry about any of this stuff anymore, and I'm going to be fine. And it's an awesome place to get to. It usually takes a little bit longer, and it usually takes even longer if you're going to try to be on TV in front of everybody.
Right. Well, it took a while. I mean, I'm no overnight success. I've been doing this for 14, 15 years. I'm 49 years old. Are you 50? You're 50. That must suck. Sorry, man. No,
well, not yet.
Your birthday's right after mine, I think. We're real close. Yeah. Are you April?
August.
See, we don't know each other that well. I just knew it started with an A. So I'm a little older.
Close. You had two choices.
But I'll tell you two things. These seem to work against one another. One of my friends told me one time, hang around the hoop. See what kind of rebound bounces your way. Most people take themselves out of the game. Most people strap on their own suicide vest and blow up their own opportunities. And I think that's true. I think that's really true. So hang around the hoop. The second is you and I talked here and there, but you're an inspiration and in that you're an example of what is increasingly true for everyone who does what we do. You don't have to white knuckle this. You don't have to worry about backroom politics. You don't worry about who likes you and who doesn't like you. You don't worry about the tap on the shoulder because you can go build out there on your own like you have done, at Spotify.
Yeah, but again, it wasn't going to happen until I had gone through all the other stuff to go, okay, well, this isn't the way to do it. And then you want to blame everybody else and all these different things. But look, none of that. We've talked about that. We don't need to share that a ton with the audience because I think I've done a million versions of it already. But I'm really happy for you. You deserve it. You're terrific on television. Like I said, I'm happy, and I'm also biased because I got to know you personally. So thanks,
Thank you.
Another piece that I want to just spend a few minutes on, and we're going to bring Ceruti in here, but De'Aaron Fox on the move here. We had heard that's how trades are supposed to work. Rumblings that he's available. Sacramento exploring opportunities. Other teams listed as potentially monitoring the situation. So De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio. Sacramento gets Zach LaVine from Chicago. They get a first round pick in 25, top 14 protected, a 25 second round pick, a 27 first round pick from San Antonio, a 28 second round pick from Denver, and then they get their 28 second round pick back. So we're looking at a couple first and 3 seconds. The Bulls moving LaVine out, end up with Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter. Sad day for us on the pod, and a 25 first round pick, which is their own pick back this year. That, remember, was out at San Antonio. It was top 10 protected, so they get control of their own pick back. So, Sacramento, once Fox wasn't going to do the extension, they were stuck, and they want to get in front of this now. It would be great if the player wasn't Zach LaVine that they were getting back. And, some of you are going to think I'm nuts. Some of you are going to see the scoring, the first step, which is incredible, the 3-point shooting, how steady he's been. He's been healthy this year, and you like him. That's fine. I don't. I think he's a losing player, and I'm not going to move off of that. I think there's tons of evidence in my favor, but he's probably going to score like 48 one night, and then people are going to tell me that he's awesome. So I think Sacramento was stuck, but the saddest thing I think out of all of this is just Sacramento's window of like, look at what Sacramento's doing. Like, they're doing a good job. They're putting together a really nice starting five. And then maybe a couple years ago, when you look at a really high seeding in the West, it's like, well, they were the healthiest unit. Their top five played this percentage of possible minutes. Like, it's off the charts, incredible health, luck. But good for them, And now it just feels like they're moving further and further away from all of that stuff. I don't have a problem with the DeRozan thing at all. I've said numerous times, like, if you want to close a game with Harrison Barnes or DeMar DeRozan, although I really do like some of the Harrison Barnes stuff, believe it or not, with San Antonio. Do you want to close with DeRozan with the four other guys, with Sabonis, with Keegan, with Monk, and with Fox? Or do you want to close, with Barnes? Well, no, it makes sense. It makes sense to have DeRozan in there. Maybe DeRozan, despite getting up there in age, a bit of an insurance against something like this once they could kind of read the tea leaves on the future with De'Aaron Fox. So San Antonio gets somebody real. They also have to move Castle, which I don't even think there was any way any of that was even going to happen, even if a lot of us are probably overrating Castle today. But that's what we do with guys who are 40 plus games into their rookie season or NBA career in this case, same thing, redundant, but didn't profile as like this massive offensive guy. And I think from what my expectations were from him, from what I saw offensively of him at UConn to where he's at now, like, I think it's really nice. And it's not a guy that you want to be in the business of trading on top of being in the rookie contract and everything else. So I just like De'Aaron Fox. And sometimes I just want to be allowed to say I like a player. So yeah, he's not a bunch of other guys. And yeah, he's not perfect. And 2 years ago was filthy how nice he was. And there's some numbers that you could go through and be like, well, is he ever going to be that guy again? My guess would be maybe not the counting stats, but the efficiency and the fact that you have some defensive options, including the best defensive option in the NBA and Wembanyama behind him. So I think it it does a lot of things with San Antonio where even though Chris Paul's been so good at like dictating a lot of the stuff they can do, I mean, there's only so much tread in the tire there. He can be limited at times offensively. So now you're adding in somebody who De'Aaron Fox, like when he's going, he's just really, really tough to deal with. And you have a financial commitment coming up here, but like waiting around for the person that's better than De'Aaron Fox, hoping that some guy in his 30s is going to want to play in San Antonio with Wembanyama. Like, does that even make sense for them? So I like the trade. Bulls fans, though, probably looking at this collective group and saying, now after trading DeRozan, Caruso, and Levine, that's 0 first-round picks coming back. Technically, they do get control of their own back, but it's not like adding an extra first. So I like the trade for San Antonio. I understand it for Sacramento. They're picking a guy that I don't like, and then they're Chicago. And all you really need to understand here, if that's what Chicago got back, like that's how bad the market was for Levine. So I think the market backs my feelings about the player. I want to bring in Ceruti here really quick because it's one final exercise in this Luka thing, which I could probably do a Wednesday pod on it too, but we will not do that. We'll be back to football and Super Bowl week. Did not expect to be doing a Monday NBA podcast, by the way, the week leading up to it. So as I've said, and it feels like it's been backed up, it's just Nico Harrison wanted Anthony Davis so badly, he didn't even want to know who else was available. So if we did the just hypothetical here, like where do we draw the line? Like, are there no's? Are there no's where if Nico calls the other team and offers Luka for that other team's best guy, how many teams are actually saying no? Which is, again, why I think this entire thing was ridiculous to do it this way, to have a market of one team. Maybe Nico didn't want to get a yes from some of those other teams and have to have the internal debate of this guy over clearly one of his favorite players in the league in Anthony Davis. So what do we got, Ceruti?
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, as a Magic fan, and we're going through our shit right now. It's just a different story for a different day. But like, hypothetically, if they call the Magic, we're like, hey, if we offered you Paolo and picks and players, like, would you say no? We'll get to that in a second. I kind of want to work our way down though. So it's essentially like, does the other team say no? Luka trades. I'll start with Wemby. That's a no, right? Like, there's no way they're trading Wemby. The Spurs are trading Wemby for Luka.
Yeah, it's a no.
No, easy enough. Nuggets, 29-year-old Jokic. I still think it's a no.
I think it's a no.
SGA? OKC? Just straight up.
Yeah. I think it's a no, okay, because it's a health thing. And even though I don't think there's a good day, I've thought SGA is better than Luka, but he's the next guy on the list, right? So SGA's healthier. And that group, like you would be disrupting this group. And when they get Chet back, like we think they can win an NBA title with that group right now. And so then you're thinking about Luka and you're going, what am I bringing in? If these guys are trading him, like what's the stuff that I don't know about Luka? And meanwhile, like this Thunder team acts like a high school team. They seem like they love each other. I've spent 3 different segments this season just raving about the personality of this team and the buy-in and everybody understanding. So I think it's a no, only because there's a disruption part of that you're not sure about. You can't, if you're Presti, you couldn't say, hey, if we bring Luka in, all of it's fine. It's awesome. He picks right back up. Even though I believe Luka's the better player and the health part of it. That's why I think it's a no. Do you disagree?
I agree. I don't think
okay.
they do that. Now, I saw some people being like, could you get funky and say, what about Jalen Williams, Chet, throw in some other filler, some good players, a bunch of draft picks? Like, would OKC say no to that? I actually think they'd still say no. I think they're perfect. Like, I don't think they want to screw with what they have right now, even though, like, obviously Luka's the better asset.
Yeah, that's a different conversation, because then you can also look at it from the Dallas side of like all of these teams that I can't believe they didn't reach out to. And you're like, well, right. But Dallas clearly didn't want to just reset and rebuild and then picks, and they've got to move these other guys and all this stuff. Like, they were not in the deal of like, let's get a marginal player and some contract filler, but now we have control of your next 4 drafts. What I would say is get a swap in there. Get a swap, or maybe get a second first if you're trading somebody who, when we heard it, no one believed that it was actually true. So ask for a swap. I just would love the idea that Pelinka's like, no, sorry,
Deal breaker.
Can't do a swap.
I just want, I wish we would have known what those conversations were like, because I honestly think you could have asked for 4. And are you still saying no for Luka? Like, I think the Lakers still say yes. Like, I think you have to do the trade. So
I think about it all the time. Like, just the hypothetical, if you had that job and the other guy's like, all right, Russillo, you can have Luka, but I need, and you say no at first. You try to figure out like where the middle is. And then he's like, okay, well, I need the 2 first. Sorry. Okay, well, when I say no, like you're not getting Luka. Yeah, no problem with that.
We're good.
I mean, credit to Pelinka, man.
Yeah.
Or he's like, yeah, so who I'm not bidding against anybody.
Would you feel
thanking
bad
me for keeping a secret?
This is, I was trying to think of like what the equivalent of this would be. Like, would you feel bad? Because they're apparently friends, like they're buddies. Like, would you feel bad just fleecing your friend? Like, I'd feel bad fleecing a friend in like a fantasy trade, let alone.
I think I'm an incredibly loyal friend, but if you're friends with somebody in the NBA and you're worried about their feelings, then you shouldn't have the job.
Yeah.
Like, I think those guys all understand that ultimately they're all compete. Like, there's guys that are really good friends with each other, guys that can't stand each other. But you can't, I don't think when you're given the honor, really, I mean, it's like you're this elected official, but you're not elected. And all of the millions of people care about the outcome of these games. Like, you owe it to them to do the best and at times the most ruthless version of the job.
I just think it's funny, like, because if say Pelinka was the GM of like the Hornets, right? And Nico goes to him and goes, hey, I've got this deal, to Luka for AD. Like, what do you think? Pelinka's like, you're an idiot. Absolutely not. Absolutely. And Nico had no friend, nobody. I mean, I don't know, maybe he did and he still didn't care and was just stubborn about it. He had nobody in his life that was like, that he could run this by and be like, this is a horrible idea. That's another sad element to this.
It is worth repeating, as I did in the Open, just in case, you're driving around, you could miss it. People rave about Nico. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not the GM where there have been guys over the years, and there's just not that many of them anymore. I don't even know who, like, top of my head, who I would think of as like the GM everybody else makes fun of. But Nico is praised. Okay. And I do wonder, like, if the mob moving all in one direction, be like, is there any scenario where this dude at the end of it all goes, I was right? I still can't imagine only calling one team and then being like, I'm psyched that Pelinka kept this quiet.
And the Nico thing, that may all be true, but he still has the Steph Curry Nike pitch, right? That everybody likes to throw in his face too. So it's like, that made the rounds too. Signs. Yeah.
That wasn't great. That was a long time ago.
Not great.
Different job. All right. I still can't stop talking about the trade. I've done like 4 segments on it.
All right, couple more.
Let's go back to it.
Bucks straight up. I think the Bucks say no. You don't lose your guy unless you absolutely have to. And that's their guy, Giannis.
That one might be closer to a yes, only because, like, the irony of the Giannis Luka thing is that Giannis has been somebody now for like 2+ years where others can be like, watch out for that one. Like, pay attention to what's going on there. Oh, the reason they did the Dame deal is because of him. And, like, ownership didn't want it. It's just like, okay. All of the things that have been theorized, like, behind the scenes with Giannis, that just happened with Luka. So, and we had never heard any of those things. So it feels like a bit like the Tatum one. I don't know if Tatum's next. So it might be a no because he's their guy. But would you be trading Giannis uncertainty for Luka's certainty? It would depend solely on, like, how a conversation, you'd have to be like, we have to make sure that we're going to be able to sign him. Is he going to be happy here? Is he going to go like, I don't want anything to do with this place? So
yeah, I think these are operating under the assumption that that's a yes, like that he would be like, all right, I'll play here and sign a deal.
If it's a yes, if it's a yes that Luka would be there long term, then I think Milwaukee would do it.
Even if Giannis is like, yeah, I'm here for 5 years too.
Oh, that's different then. That's different.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with like uncertainty and made up certainty. So
yeah, all right.
It might be made up uncertainty too.
The next one is the Celtics and Tatum. I mean, because that was I still think, I'll let you talk first, but would the Celtics go, yeah, we'll give you Tatum for Luka right now, straight up?
Because they just won, and he plays every game, and like this is the most fun I've ever had watching Tatum. I mean, what he was doing last night, granted that Sixers team super beat up, but they had to come back from 26 down. I mean, he's playing point guard. Nobody really seems to, he doesn't get like talked about enough nationally that he's basically their point guard. And then he's playing center defensively against Dallas. You don't have to deal with any of the conditioning, injury stuff. You don't have to deal with any of those things, and you just won it with your guy. So Luka is the better player. But I think they'd say no. I think Ainge would have said yes. I think Ainge would have gone, thanks for the championship. Fuck it. Because Luka's a better player.
I think you're probably right on Ainge. All right, this is where it gets interesting. They call up the T-Wolves and say, we'll give you Luka for Ant. I mean, you have to make the salaries work, so there have to be other things in there.
We're just having fun here. We don't have to worry about a trade machine grade. I would do it if I'm Minnesota. Wouldn't have to think very hard about it.
I think I would too. So that's kind of.
I don't know. There's many people that like Ant as much as me, and I don't even have to think about it.
I mean, Luke is 26. Like it's not like he's in his late 20s. Like you're still getting ideally, however many years left. Gobert would probably be excited about that. So that's a yes. All right. So that's like kind of the first. All right. There's the line in the sand.
Because I have another teammate that can't stand me.
This is the one that kind of got me thinking as a Magic fan. Like Paolo, I'm sure the Magic would do Paolo for Luka straight up. But I was like, take it even a step further. Like if the Mavs really wanted to, like we're getting other offers from teams, and you really had to like make an offer for him to get him and beat everybody else out. Like, would you offer Paolo, Anthony Black, Jonathan Isaac, picks? Like, would you do that? Like, is Luka that much better now and then whatever the next 5 years, whatever years, than what you think Paolo's ceiling is? And I think the answer actually is yes.
Yeah, I would say whatever you guys want to do. Would you do Paolo and Suggs and then figure out the rest?
And then I get the Euro connection of Luka and Franz and make the other pieces work. I think I would do it. What
if it was Franz and Paolo?
I don't think I'd do that. No. Because I just think you're talking like two potential, like one top 10 player and another top 25 player. Like I think Suggs isn't. I think I would do it if it was Suggs and Paolo. I don't know if I'd do it if it was Franz.
Like, all right, I know you guys like centers. Can we interest you in a little Wendell action? Goga.
We heard you like defense. You want Jonathan Isaac. Yeah.
That's going to be the line because from here on out, it's all yeses.
Yeah, because I wrote down like the Cavs for Mitchell. Yes. Knicks, you can get Brunson back, reunite him. Like Cade, you're doing that. So that's it. It's basically like
Would Knicks fans do Brunson and Cat? Like if the money worked, Brunson and Cat, and then you get Luka.
How would you not?
Oh, I don't know. I think Knicks fans love this fucking team.
I get why they do, and it's funny. I watched the Bing Bong video, the original long version one. That video,
the original
was so
one's
great.
Unbelievable. I could watch those guys. I was mad I ran out of videos from those guys.
So
I wanted more.
So I get.
You know what my new one is? I was on Instagram. Cool, and there was this guy that was just posting his VR chat visits to everybody. I got caught in like 8 or 9 of those. It was unbelievable. All right. Anyway, back to reality.
No, I think that's it. Yeah, I think the line is basically Ant Paolo. So if you go down like Bill's trade value rankings, that's like, right around 7, 8, 9.
So the no's are what? So the no's are Wemby, Jokic, SGA. That's like the hard nose. I still think SGA is, I got to think about it. No. Jokic is a hard no. Wemby's a hard no, just because of the possibility and where you're at in the timeline and all that kind of stuff.
What mood I'm in are the Celtics and Bucks. So it's like a maybe. And then the yeses are and Paolo. I think that's right.
Okay. I think we did some good work there.
Yeah.
All right.
Good luck.
He covers the Lakers. I see him every time I go to the games there. I've seen him around LA for a while, and he does a great job on the NBA. Jovan Buha joins us from The Athletic, who covers, as I said, the Lakers. And again, Buha's block, his podcast, which I was checking out clips of this morning. So Saturday night, all of us, are you serious? This is happening. So like normally I would ask why. Well, that's an easy yes. It's Luka. How? I think we know those pieces, but I'll ask more. Is there anything that you've been able to learn, gather, like a piece that you've put together since late Saturday night till today that gives you a better understanding of this deal?
Well, it seems like this was the rare trade going back to like old school NBA days where the two GMs just kept this between themselves and talking to people around the Lakers organization that I consistently talk to in different segments of the front office or the organization. Like these people legitimately did not know that this trade was coming and had no idea about the inner workings of it. So I think that this was like the rare trade. Like we've seen a few of these throughout recent NBA history, but I think nothing quite to this magnitude. So the fact that they were able to keep this between them, not let it leak out, not let the agents know, not let the players know, I think that's pretty rare in 2025. I mean, there's a lot to get into with this. I still don't understand it. I mean, I listened to your reaction with Bill right after it happened, and it was like, I'm totally in agreement with you. Like, there's just so many parts of this I still don't quite understand. And I think from the Lakers end, like they now have a golden parachute into the next era of post LeBron, and now it seems like they're far better positioned than they were looking to be as recently as a couple of days ago.
Yeah, maybe that's the most interesting part of this because I've spent so much time on the Mavs thing. Like it's pretty clear. It resets 2025. It probably changes like what you're capable of doing. They've been playing better, but it's just a reminder that when somebody like this becomes available, none of your 2025 plans mean anything. And it's a shift into whatever the Luka phase is. And maybe there's some other little piece here at the trade deadline, but on the perimeter defensively between LeBron, Reeves, and Luka, it was like, oh my God. But it's like, well, you can't. Yeah. No one would ever go, well, you know what? I'd say yes, but I don't like our perimeter defense, and now we only have Jackson Hayes at center, so this doesn't make basketball sense right now. It speaks to just hit the reset button because you would hope to get one of these. Granted, Lakers is a little bit different with their history, but as I've said earlier, big franchises could go 25, 30 years and never get somebody like this, and they just got it.
Yeah, and it feels like they've always, like, you could go Luka, LeBron, Kobe, Shaq, Magic, Kareem, Baylor, West, Chamberlain. Like the Lakers have a history of getting generational superstars and often trading for these guys in ways you wouldn't quite expect. And I think to your point, the kind of crazy thing was the context of this night was the Lakers are coming off of one of their best wins of the season. I would say, to me, it was right up there with the Celtics win, because you win at MSG without Anthony Davis. And as you just said, like Jackson Hayes started at center, and they went through half of that game playing centerless and playing these small ball looks. And so they complete a 4-1 Grammy trip. They've won 8 of 10. It looks like they're finally finding this identity. And at the time, the intel I was getting, and I know you and I spoke a little bit about this at the Lakers-Celtics game, was like they're looking for something along the margins. Maybe they're going to add a big man, a couple second-round picks, a couple first-round picks, like nothing seismic. And then all of a sudden, we're in the media room typing away on our post-game stories, and this tweet drops, and none of us believe it. And we had to wait for Shams to confirm it again and then start immediately calling and texting people. So I think for the Lakers, this was a situation that obviously Dallas approached them. They did not think Luka was available or that they could get him for that type package. So this was a situation where they just had to alter course in terms of, I think ideally they would have just kept things together and made a couple small moves. But when this opportunity presents itself, like you can't say no.
I look at the LeBron piece of this, and we talked about it on Saturday a little bit. And I've seen it discussed, like, oh well, LeBron is so great on the ball, which is true. I mean, he's brilliant, and it's one of my favorite things about his entire career. And it's kind of funny where it's like, well, some of these stupid podcasts that'll be like, well, he doesn't actually have the scoring mentality of like whatever. And you're like, dude, whatever, just the guy's a brilliant basketball player. And he's put up plenty of scoring numbers. It would tell you he's a scorer, but he's just such a terrific passer, and his vision and all these different things. Like that's the bonus on top of everything else. All right. But with Luka now at this phase, like I think if LeBron stays for a couple more years, now granted, like the other day, I think it was last month. They were like, how much longer could you play? And he was like, at a high level, it was like 5 to 7 years. I mean, it was insane, but whatever. I would expect him to answer it that way.
Yeah.
So if he looks at his window with the Lakers and says, okay, this actually makes a little bit more sense. I think this is actually a really good basketball fit now for him with where he's at in his career, because like Austin Reeves has been running point guard, even if I probably like the LeBron stuff. Now, the Knicks thing was a little different because OG hurts his foot, so he's out. So now Josh Hart is on LeBron. LeBron was brilliant in his execution late in that game, and Hart was also physically just overmatched on top of everything else. So there's all these LeBron on ball initiating the offense possessions that I love, but it was just a lot to ask of him to do that at this stage of his career. So that's why Reeves is doing it so much. So I do think that there's a basketball fit that makes way more sense as opposed to like LeBron and Luka in his prime. So there's another part of the LeBron future that I'm going to ask after that. But from like the basketball standpoint, I know it's an incomplete roster and everything, but would you agree that it actually is an assist to him as opposed to being redundant early in his career?
I think so. And I think both players have now had the experience of adjusting to playing with co-stars, with LeBron obviously going back to the Heatles, with Wade and Bosh, in Cleveland with Kyrie and Kevin Love, and then now in LA with AD, and then Luka with Kyrie. The one interesting part to me is that like they both have always been the Batman in that situation. It's always been more so the other stars adjusting more to them rather than them adjusting to them, because they've clearly been the best player in those situations. This is kind of the first situation where they could look at each other and say like they can make the case for why they're the better player or the better fit, whatever. And then they could also make the case for the other player to kind of take more control. So I do expect, like, Luka is 25. He's not even yet in his prime. I think he's obviously the better player between the two right now. So I think Luka should be the primary ball handler and point guard. And you'll see a lot of Luka LeBron two-man game. And we saw it with Team USA when he played a bit more off the ball and basically was like in the Draymond role with Steph. And Luka and Steph aren't the same type of player, but you can imagine LeBron screening for Luka and hitting him in the short roll. And then now you have LeBron with a 4-on-3 advantage. He can either get downhill, get to the rim and finish, or he can drive and kick to shooters in the corner, cutters, whatever. So I think like there will naturally be a learning curve here, in an adjustment period for both guys in terms of learning to play with each other. They are both supercomputers. So there's going to be a bit of some growth and learning there. But I think ultimately, like, these are two of the smartest players in the league, two of the best passers in the league. There's a lot of similarities between them from a skill and playing style perspective. So I think I don't want to overcomplicate it. Like, I think these two guys will figure it out, but you can go 1-4 pick and roll, 4-1 pick and roll. You could have Luka screening for LeBron and popping, or also getting hit in the short roll and then making decisions. So I think like those two are going to have a great chemistry. Again, I think it's going to take some time, but I think offensively, this team has a high ceiling. It's, as you've alluded to, the defensive side, and having Jackson Hayes as your starting center. That's where my questions begin. Okay,
2 LeBron questions there. Is he still on the Lakers at the end of the week?
Yes. That's my understanding. He's not going to. I mean, he has a no trade clause, so he would have to okay any trade. Like, I guess technically that there's a possibility here in the next 3 days, but as Chris Haynes reported, LeBron does not intend to ask out, or so I think he's going to stay through the deadline.
Okay. Do you think that he opts out and then wants to do an extension with the Lakers this summer?
I do. I do. Now, he has a player option for next year. And as I reported along with Shams at the end of last season, the intel we were getting was that he was likely looking at 1 to 2 more years, which would bring him to the end of the 2025-26 season. I think that's still the general operating assumption around the league right now, is that he's going to play 1 more year and likely retire at the end of 2026. But as you said, like, he's talked about, I could play 5 to 7 more years. Well, we'll see what happens with Bryce James in terms of him being an NBA prospect and his timeline. So there are a lot of other factors that could come into play here. But I do think LeBron, whether he just opts into the player option or tries to sign an extension and then eventually, like the weird thing with signing an extension would be if you were going to play one more year, it wouldn't really make sense. Like I guess you could get that number a little bit higher, but it wouldn't really make sense to like sign an extension and then say, I'm retiring. So I think he's going to have to decide what he wants to do next year. But I do think that the operating assumption has been he's going to play one more year.
Okay, I touched on this in the open too, where I've heard it said, whether it was, in reports or people talking about it on shows or just phone calls that you're making, it's like, oh, the Lakers, starting to get sick of this whole Klutch thing. And my point would be like, well, yeah, they got sick of it to get Luka. Like, this is not, I don't think that that's the time. Like, you can tell me that they're tired of Klutch. This is not a great example to show that they now have this backbone where they're going to push back against all of this stuff. And that's why they traded Anthony Davis. They traded Anthony Davis because they just got Luka fucking Doncic. All right. But
Yeah.
what is accurate about that dynamic, the angst that goes along with it? Because, some people are kind of going back and replaying it of like, well, when Anthony Davis asked for help, and then, that's LeBron 101, and then this trade deadline, all the passive aggressive stuff that that you're signing up for here, which I think ultimately is like really easy to ignore and super pointless. And we make a big deal out of it. I think the people that do it for a living are like, oh, cool, you want us to trade for a better player? Awesome. Thank you. Awesome tweet. Like, we'll see you with 7-10 for tip. What do you think is fair about that dynamic?
I certainly think it has been a bit strained through the years, maybe to say the least. I think going back to the Russell Westbrook trade, that is a sliding doors moment in this whole LeBron AD era, and just the dynamic between Klutch and the Lakers. And if you look at, like, whenever I do national shows and I get asked about how much control LeBron has, the thing I always say is, yes, that there are examples we can look at. Obviously, drafting and signing Bronny to a 4-year deal. But from an opportunity cost perspective, he's making less than a typical vet minimum guy. So the Lakers are actually saving money on the back end of the roster. But Bronny thing aside, obviously that was in part a favor to LeBron and what he wanted. And then they'll often have several Klutch guys on the roster. But again, those are often vet minimum guys, or at most it's been like mid-level type guys. But again, relatively low opportunity cost. If LeBron had his way over the last few years, they would have traded for Kyrie. They would have traded for DeJounte Murray. They would have traded for Zach LaVine. LeBron has wanted a third star next to him in AD, and primarily a third ball handling / perimeter guy type star. Like he's wanted to redo the Westbrook trade, but do it with a better fitting third star. Lakers have not done that. Then even looking at AD, where AD's often been more the quiet guy. He's not really making the passive aggressive remarks. AD wanted James Borrego going back to the summer. He was back, like Borrego was his guy. He was the guy that he was backing. They end up signing or agreeing to terms with JJ Redick. And that's to say nothing of like previously when LeBron had wanted Ty Lue and Monty Williams, and they get Frank Vogel. And then you go the last few years, AD has wanted to play power forward. It's been the worst kept secret that AD prefers to play power forward compared to center. He's just had to play center because the Lakers have not prioritized adding a center. And it's been, if you look at from 2021 on, it's been a revolving door of vet minimum centers who are all like fringe rotation players. So naturally, looking at the roster, you have to shift AD up to play center because the options are guys who probably shouldn't be playing in like a team with championship aspirations. So I think if you look at just like take all the words and whatever, put that to the side, just look at the actions. The Lakers have not really done what LeBron and AD have wanted for several years now. Or if they have, it's been very like small opportunity cost type situation. So I think really since the Westbrook trade, we can trace back like the relationship fraying a little bit. And it felt like at some point here, it was going to come to a natural conclusion. And I do think, I'm not going to say like a Klutch star will never be a Laker again, because I think it's certainly possible. But once LeBron is done being a Laker, I think that relationship has kind of run its course.
Yeah, that's why when you were talking about the price stuff, I'm like, are we going to do this all
maybe
over
somewhere
again?
else, right? Like, I mean, could be, but yeah.
That's why I chuck. And we don't need to stay on that because we're talking about somebody in high school where I think it's just entirely different. Like once you have an NBA jersey on, you're getting a contract. You're part of the conversation now, and we're going to talk about it. But I did think after that Philly disaster, it was nice to see JJ Redick get him out there from the MSG game. I thought it was really smart by Redick to just do it so quickly. Like, hey, get another game. They had taken control. It was really a phenomenal Laker performance from start to finish, their defense and everything, and the crowd's chanting. And I think other coaches would just be defiant, be like, oh, you're going to make a mockery of this whole thing? Like you're chanting Bronny. We're not going to put him in. And instead he puts him in. And again, the basketball part of it's fairly irrelevant because he probably not an NBA player right now. All right, that's all I want to do on that. So I don't even want any follow-up to any of that stuff. Let's stay on the AD thing because you know that he wants to play power forward. And it's funny because in theory now with the roster with Dallas, granted it dependent upon, Gafford and what Lively's availability could be if he's even going to be available towards the end of the year, that there are centers on paper that he should be playing with. My guess would be Dallas and Jason Kidd will close with him at center the same way the Lakers did when they told him he wasn't really the center, but it just made way more sense. And if you look at that Heat finals, when they won it 5 years ago, I was going through the minutes this morning. LeBron led the team in minutes at 236. Davis played 229. The only other big that's on the radar here is Dwight Howard at 71 minutes in that series in particular. So I understand his point, and some of it's a bit like I've had these injuries. It's like, dude, you've had injuries. Wherever you want to pretend that you were aligned and how you were introduced and everything, you were around him for years.
Yeah.
What is this about when every number tells you? And the reality is, like, Dallas is going to close with him at center, I bet, in playoff games, even if they have the options of Lively and Gafford.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Davis is a center. Like, let's make no mistake about it. I'm just like sharing that is what he's wanted. And if we're arguing that like they've catered, like, because I just think there's a narrative out there that they've completely catered to LeBron and AD's wishes and whatever they want. And I'm just pushing back a little bit against that because I think there's been some very clear things that they've wanted that they've not gotten that maybe in other situations they would get. But AD is
by the way, Jovan, I'm glad that you gave us that timeline because the examples that you're using are really easy to forget, especially if you want to push the idea that they've only gotten what they've wanted. I guess in the post Doncic trade stuff that I don't really have a ton of time for is that all of a sudden it's like this doesn't work anymore. When it's like, dude, they have 3 things in 7 months that I can point to that are fairly in Klutch's favor, and it says not. This trade has nothing to do with the relationship. Is my point.
Yeah, and to kind of to your point, they have given them like whatever contracts they wanted in terms of contract structure, so that's certainly an argument, against that as well. But in terms of AD, I think the one thing that has been true, and I think the one thing that he feels is like, I think he likes when playing next to another big and having that guy be the primary center defender, and then he can roam defensively. And I think going back to the 2020 title year, when you had JaVale or Dwight on Nikola Jokic or whatever other big man that they were running into, AD liked being the roamer who could be the low man, be helping rotating out the shooters and just kind of manning, quarterbacking the defense in that sense. So I think for him, like one constant thing that the teams try to do against the Lakers when he's at the 5 is you just try to get him out of the paint. And Steve Kerr has talked about like Golden State's entire offense when they play the Lakers is trying to find and come up with ways to get Anthony Davis away from the rim. And they feel like if they can get AD out of away from the rim, it's going to be a layup line or an offensive rebound line or party, whatever. So I think that's 280's, I guess, argument. I see the value in that. And the Lakers, like even the last couple of years, have tended to play better when they played bigger lineups, not even necessarily another center out there, but like when they play their big wings and they're going like LeBron, a big guy, 6'8" or 6'9" and above, and AD, those lineups have played really well. It's just been because the roster has been so kind of structured towards guards and perimeter guys that they typically play these like 3-guard lineups that haven't been as good defensively. So I get where AD's coming from, but ultimately he's a 5, and I think Dallas is going to figure out with their roster, like him closing at the 5 is the best option.
Yeah, when I was running through those minutes too, JaVale didn't play, but his numbers as far as like his playoff log, even for that year when they won it, Because like you could point to like, well, AD played more because JaVale wasn't available and they were only playing Dwight and all this different stuff. But like JaVale was declining minutes as those playoffs kept going the entire time, whether it was health or just the fit and all that stuff. So I think what they'll do is AD will play. He'll be next to a center. Everybody's going to be all smiles. He's going to talk about how awesome the whole thing is. And then I can't wait to see him in the playoffs when it's like, all right, here's the 6 minutes to go group. Like we need more spacing and we're good enough defensively with just AD depending on this matchup. But look, Dallas with two guys and AD against Joker and then playing off of Gordon because Gordon doesn't provide any spacing, kind of like what we saw with the Cat and Rudy dynamic with Minnesota. Like there's something there for Dallas. But I have to finish with LA just because, that's the perspective that you're giving us here on this. What do you think of this team now for this year?
I think it depends on what they do in the next 3 days here, because if they stand pat with the current roster, as you just alluded to earlier, Jackson Hayes is a starting center. I think he's more of a fringe rotation player rather than a starting rotation player. So that's, and again, I think it's going to be more like the Knicks game where they go with like Dorian Finney-Smith at the 5 or Jared Vanderbilt at the 5, and they play these wing heavy lineups. And I know JJ Redick likes that. He likes the more modern kind of small ball type lineups, but I think this group just has too many holes defensively. Like I think Max Christie's been an afterthought in this trade, but he had kind of become the Lakers' 4th best player over the last month and a half. He was they were 16-8 with him in the starting lineup. He was shooting 40% on threes, averaging between 11 and 12 points a game. So Max Christie had kind of become a reliable two-way wing for them. And I think they lost 2 starters and they really added 1. And of course, Luka's better than AD. And again, you make the trade 10 out of 10 times. But from a short-term perspective, this group took a step back defensively and took a major step back in the interior. They already needed a second center. Now they don't really they might need 2 centers, honestly. So
right.
I think depending on what they do in the next 3 days, I've heard that they're trying to be the one big thing here is they've shifted from there was this notion of the LeBron 80 timeline of you have maybe 18 months to try and maximize this window. They've shifted away from that and now they're on the Luka timeline. So I think any move they make, if they invest that 2031 first round pick or a pick swap or even any of the younger talent, it's going to be about getting a guy who can fit now and longer term with Luka. So I don't think they're going to make some type of win now move in terms of here's a first round pick for a 30-year-old center, a 33-year-old. I think they're looking at guys in their late 20s and younger and guys who can play with Luka longer term. So if they do make a bigger move here, I think it'll be for a younger player. But I would temper expectations a bit and probably look at maybe them trying to find a bargain center and then kind of just going forward and seeing what you can do with this group. But they're certainly defensively, they're relying on Jared Vanderbilt, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Gabe Vincent. I like each of those guys individually, but to have those be your top 3 defenders, I think there's a clear limitation there. And then size-wise, specifically at the center spot, it's problematic.
The only reason he was even available is clearly Dallas, Nico Harrison. They had to have I would say not understood level of disdain for Luka's entire thing, whether it was a conditioning, injury projections, personality. Look, it got pretty rough on the court at times. I can't imagine factoring in how often he complains. There'd be a reason why you don't want to give a guy a 5-year extension when he's, arguably at best the 2nd best player in the world. But is there anything that you've uncovered, and it's early here, where the Lakers, because everybody does this, there's all these Pelicans players where other teams would be if I can just get that guy into our system and their track record, all these different things, where whether it's a wake-up call to Luke himself and all the motivation he needs, or I think there's another part of it where it's maybe it just doesn't matter for this guy and you can worry about that north of 30. But is there anything you think is interesting that you've uncovered about the preparation of the only reason he was available is because of some of these longer term concerns?
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me that this is sort of a breakup and one side trying to get out and explain the reasons why they broke up with the other person, but it just hasn't really carried much weight in no pun intended here. But as you said, like Luka could be smoking a cigarette on the court, and it's like you give that guy the supermax, and you figure it out later. And I don't understand it. I've heard similar things: weight, conditioning, work ethic, leadership, attitude, mindset, like all those things have been floating out there. But I also think from the Lakers side, like they're optimistic that if there is one player that can maybe change some of those things with Luka, and to your point, maybe he just is who he is, and none of this is going to change. But like, he loves LeBron. He said it in his rookie press conference. Like, LeBron is his idol. LeBron is a guy he's looked up to. He's tried to model his game after. So learning from LeBron, the athlete who's arguably taking the best care of his body in history, invests $1 million every summer in his body, like, that's a guy that I think the Lakers are optimistic. Like, if Luka can learn from that example, and we've seen like even Kyrie and AD for they have their quirks, we'll say. Like, those guys have talked about learning from LeBron and the impact he's had on them. So I think the Lakers are optimistic that Luka's still 25. He's not even yet in his prime, and if he could have a couple of years with LeBron and seeing what time he gets to the practice facility, how much he's investing pre and post practice into his body in terms of all the different things he's doing, like, that can have some sort of impact on him. But even if it doesn't, you have a 25-year-old generational star who has already led teams to the finals, conference finals, third in regular season scoring all time in terms of points per game, second in the playoffs. Like, don't overthink it. This guy is could be the best player in the league as soon as like next season, arguably. And it's just, I still can't believe that this trade happened.
I can't either, man. Enjoy, though. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you want to check out more from Jovan, you can check out his work on The Athletic. Again, his podcast, Buha's Block. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari, 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Voltron, man, we're back. Fully formed here. We've got Ceruti back from Mexico, Kyle Wargon hanging out in the shadows around the rim, Will Cain style, perhaps. And my name's Ryan. I'm your host. It's Life Advice, lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. Some are surmising that I'm just happy to have Ceruti back. Do you have any statement?
No, I mean, I listened to the pods. You were accurate in that you sent me kind of like a bigger picture show thing. And I was like, it's like a Wednesday. I'm sitting on the beach. I'm reading the second Dune book. Like, I'll answer this when I get back. I don't really feel like diving into the work stuff, so I appreciate that. But I did miss the show. I didn't think I was going to miss a ton, and then I got back Saturday night. Oof. I was like, let me go to the Magic lost, and I was like, God, I don't even want to deal with anything. So let me go to sleep early. Just a Saturday night.
Your squad's struggling, dude.
Not good. Yeah, maybe something for a later date. But then I wake up at 3 a.m. to take a piss, and I'm like, why did Bill release a pod with Ryan? What's going on? And I saw the trade. I was like, oh shit. All right, I guess I'm back. So it's good to be back.
It's good to have you back. We saved a couple for you.
Oh, good.
Because you didn't want to read these. Calling teenagers virgins, 6 foot, 230, huge ass and barrel chest. Player comp, Bruce Brown. I'm 38 from the Maryland, D.C. suburbs, have 2 kids. I want to give feedback on a recent discussion about insulting minors. I'm a Commanders fan, went to Philly for the NFC Championship game. Fans were tough and mean, but fun for the most part. After the game, my friend and I were walking away from the stadium in a large group of mainly Eagles fans. We started getting pushed repeatedly, and pretty soon we're surrounded by about 6 16-year-olds. They were at an age...
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, where they just went through puberty. Dude. So we're pushing 5'10", and so... These guys are pushing 5'10", had half-grown-in mustaches. Yeah, so they're describing a gang of 16-year-olds for the most part. They weren't strong, but excited about their new pubes. Uh-oh. The loudest of them grabbed my shirt and got nose-to-nose with me. I shoved him off and told him to get your virgin hands off of me.
That's great.
And then I told his friends to get a hold of this dork virgin. This sent him into a rage, repeatedly yelling at me that he was not a virgin.
Yeah.
At that point,
sure
the
you're
argument is over. His friends knew it and pulled him away.
Yep.
I will attest that calling an aggressive 16-year-old a virgin is the best thing you can possibly do.
Really nice field test there. That's good. It all sounds good in theory until there's 6 of those dirty little guys around you and you don't know what to do. I'm glad that worked.
6 of those dirty guys around.
It's kind of the perfect scenario, actually. Yeah, because then you're like,
Because that's the one thing they're all very insecure about. They're all
in front of
so-
their buddies.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
One guy's been
Oh,
lying
yeah.
about it. She goes to a different school, right? And now it's just out on Front Street. That's awesome.
Like if you call it, somebody called me a virgin, like, there was a road rage incident or something, like, shut up, virgin. I don't even know how I'd react to it. But the like the 15, 16s, like all the way up to like maybe early college, that's about the most insulting thing you could say to somebody who actually feels like they're cool.
Yeah.
I think in a road rage incident, you would just start dying laughing. Like you in particular, because of you
I
bringing
get bad
this.
road rage. I don't know how I would react to that. I'm mostly calm except when I'm behind a wheel.
Yeah. What is that? What the hell is
Stay in
that? You get in
Connecticut,
those
buddy.
4 doors and it's just you're a different guy. It's weird.
Wow, you have that, Kyle?
Yeah. I mean, I've caught my, like I said, I'm not hopping out of the car, but I've, like, wow, did I just yell that at that guy? What the hell was that? I would never do. I was like, all right, let's just focus back up, get where we're going. But it's crazy. Like little inconveniences, like rage is the word. I don't know what that's about.
I have the least amount of patience in the car than I do in any other place.
I know, because
Don't know why.
you're so laid back in so many other things too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of conflict, I lived in Wyoming my whole life. That's not the reason. I'm in my 40s, 6'5", 260.
Wow.
I own a deli slicer and can touch the net. All right.
Whoa.
Tell me about the slicer, dude. Where
This
do you
might
does it
not
fit?
be real.
Will it fit in the kitchen?
Cut that meat.
Just made a roast last night and I was cutting it by hand like a caveman.
You made a roast? Oh,
Yeah.
Nice. Go like a
Nice
pot
indeed.
roast?
No, I mean, like, I make my own roast beef now. That's one of the
Oh my
things that I
God.
do. And I just get a big roast and, slice it as thin as I can. And, got a knife sharpener because it's just not slicing it thin enough. So we're working on it.
I like it.
Thanks.
Keep us updated. On a recent ski trip with my family, we found ourselves waiting in line with a large group of people. I started helping my 8-year-old daughter get a few things organized. I accidentally bumped into a guy standing nearby and knocked his gear over. Watch what you're doing, virgin, I heard from behind me. I told him I was sorry, but he could settle down with the virgin stuff. I gestured toward my daughter and told him that my daughter was proof that I've had sex at least once. He responded that she must be adopted because there was no way any woman, female, would let me touch her.
Oh man.
By this point, I was taking off my watch. Through the red mist of my rage, a glimmer of recognition shone through. Could it be? Was this guy a fellow Russillo fan? I knew that I had to test the theory with a reference that only a true Russillo fan would understand. That's big talk coming from a guy with Shamit face, I said to him with a knowing look in my eye. The instantaneous connection we had in that moment as Russillo fans melted away any hostility between us. He said we were cool. We could keep it moving. I said it was a simple misunderstanding. We should just charge it to the game. We had a laugh and parted on good terms. Thank you for Russillo. Thank you, Russillo Show. You're solving problems and helping dudes find common ground. I don't think that's
I hope
necessarily
it's real.
but
I hope it's real.
yeah. The deli slicer and the charge it to the game thing makes me think it might not be.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do 2 quick ones. Basketball comp. Lou Dort, 6 foot, 200 pound. Lou Dort with no 3-pointer, but I'm a menace on the defensive end and will drive through your chest. Sounds like you're terrible to play with. This might be a little touchy for you guys, but I have an interesting dilemma. For the past month or 2, there's been a special needs guy that has started coming to my gym. He gets dropped off. He's typically there for an hour and a half, then waits outside to get picked up. The problem is that he spends his entire time on his iPad in the locker room, never comes close to a dumbbell or treadmill. He looks to be in his mid to late 20s and is definitely overweight. Should I continue to do nothing, or should I approach him and offer to walk the treadmill with him? Wow, what a great guy this is.
Yeah.
Without his parents' supervision, this is clearly a window for playtime for him. This isn't meant to be a God complex thing for me or anything like that. I just feel like he might need someone to give him the push rather than leave it to himself. Would you feel any compulsion to help the guy out? I probably won't end up doing anything, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts. If your suggestion is to say something to his parents, I don't really care enough to go out of my way like that. I love that this guy has he's got a streak of a heart in him.
The idea
That's
of having a good
admirable.
heart is strong.
Yeah. get the concept. But ultimately, he knows.
I don't really want to do any of that. Right.
Yeah, because that's like, if we really want to game this out, like if I'm, we full transparency on this pod, I think it's a really incredible thought. Are you willing to fuck up your routine for this? Because it's be so nice if you were like, hey, buddy, I don't know why I just started the sentence that way, but I think everybody, hey, buddy, you want to go on the treadmill with me, and you want to, maybe try a couple machines with me. You're deciding, and look, man, it'd be unbelievable. Like it's just a day. I'm gonna give up my day for this guy to give him a little bit of direction. I think you could probably, worry potentially about the long-term things. Like this guy, I think I'm working out with him every day. Then you're coming home and your wife's like, you gaining weight? Like I got a new gym partner. Yeah, I think what you're asking here is incredible, but I think anybody that is like a normal gym routine person, you probably, and I don't know that it's selfish, but in a very practical way of like talking about all the potential scenarios here, are you willing to sign up for something that is way more than you actually want to sign up for?
Yeah, the snitch route here is way less work if you want something to be done, right? It's way less work. I think maybe what I would do if I was going to do anything would be like maybe meet him in the locker room. Like, hey, what's up? I'm John, whatever. Just talk to him. Don't necessarily suggest that he should go do it. But like you get to know him a little bit. And then maybe one day you see his parents. You're like, hey, I met John a while back. And, I don't know how much you know, but it's a big iPad guy in the locker room. Just wanted you to know. I don't know if there's like a, there's like a training thing. Like you might get a pro bono session if you're, if you think about it or whatever. But like it just, if you think he's coming here to bust his ass, it's just not true. And he just might need a little push. But like I wouldn't do it without like meeting the guy first instead of just like walking past him.
Plant the seed of fitness.
Right. So
or just be a friend. Yeah, like you could be a friend and not have him work out. Like maybe just make him feel like a little bit more part of the community at the gym. Maybe he's intimidated because he has nobody to talk to, so he doesn't want to use any butter shake
after the run. Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't exactly. It doesn't have to be like you giving him a workout regimen. Just like say what's up, ask him what he's
based on the scouting report.
Just kidding. Maybe just fair. I thought that's what he would actually get probably jazzed up about rather than the the fat burner one or whatever that is.
You have grilled cheese protein?
Yeah.
Nothing else?
Well, I would say, too, are we sure the parents don't fully know what's going on here? Like, maybe they just are like, hey, we got to get him out of the house for like an hour. Like, this is a good...
Tell you what, they're probably psyched to get the break.
Yeah. So, I don't know that they'd even be blowing up his spot. Like, I don't know. Like,
but they might be parents that are actually worried about him. Like, he's turning into whatever version of a person he's going to be as an adult. And we want to get the weight thing under control. Maybe it's that. And they're really just hoping he's at least walking slowly while looking at the iPad. And maybe just that would, if he's like, hey, can we just get you to walk while you're doing this? Playing, Fruit Ninja or whatever you're doing. Like maybe.
Yeah, you could do that on the treadmill. That's a great call.
That is.
Dial up some of these apps, and you just start slicing away, and you get the treadmill at a 2.5, 2.8.
Right. Maybe just that, because they could just be really concerned. They're like, we got to do something. I don't know how overweight he's talking, but could totally see that being a real. They're like, all right, at least he's got this, and it turns out he doesn't have this. So it might be worth just letting them know. I don't know.
But again, you would notice though. Like you pick him up and he's got no sweat stains. His shoes aren't scuffed at all. Like there are signs. Like,
I guess
maybe they're just like, whatever. Like get him. Maybe he could make a friend or socialize, and you can maybe be that friend. But yeah, I don't know. You have to put him through a workout regimen.
Yeah, I think what Kyle said is the right move. Hey, buddy, what's going on? What are you doing today? If you ever want to go walk on the treadmill with me, let me know. It also probably wouldn't be the worst idea to ask some of the trainers. Some trainers are going to be like, absolutely not. If I can't sell them 3 sessions, I got sessions to sell. There's probably somebody else, considering that trainers are usually people that want to help people. That's something in their core. You go up to one of the friendlier trainers and be like, hey, have you noticed this guy? He's just kind of like chilling. Maybe he is, to your point, Kyle, like to be dropped into that setting without any background, without any like warm up to it. And just now you're you're at the gym and he doesn't have any idea like how to use anything, and it's all probably like super intimidating, but I'm sure he's just fucking pumped to be on his iPad too for 90 minutes unsupervised. So I do think that, but I think your original thing, like there's probably some version of this where there's a compromise where the emailer feels like, hey, at least I did something here, which I think is the most important lesson in all of this, is that you're thinking about it. But I also think like a lot of people, regular gym routine people, like I get in and get out to do my thing. And I don't like, I want to help, but I don't know how much I can help. And, I'm not going to have like a new gym partner the entire time. So yeah, I think the hello, how's it going? Ask about the treadmill thing. And then maybe there's a trainer that's like, oh, I didn't even realize this guy's sitting in the locker room the whole time. Yeah, absolutely. Like I have a little window here, and then somebody else. Or next thing you know, you get a team of people,
and you're just the Wednesday guy, right?
Yeah, right. You're the Wednesday warm-up guy, but
right.
You're going to do treadmill for 90 minutes. I do it for 5, and then I lift weights, and then I'll see you here in 90, buddy.
Right, I'll do my last 5 with you. That's perfect.
Yeah. Hope that iPad's charged. Okay.
That was a good advice. I feel like we left there with actually something. There's so many we leave, and I'm like, wow, that was 10 minutes of nothing, huh?
Yeah,
that was good.
I love those 10 minutes
actionable stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Longtime listener going back to Tirico and Van Pelt. Russillo replaced Tirico, and I learned to appreciate the dulcet tones of Ryan's voice while driving around in my service rig. 48 years old, no gym stats, as I am self-employed in an extremely physical job repairing broken swimming pools in the Sacramento region, and going to the gym would feel like torture. Yep. Look, man, anything that has anything to do with concrete, stone, you guys
you're in the gym every day, man.
Yeah. Supersets. How long did you work out today? 8 hours. All right. Basketball comp, the guy or female who wipes the floor after one of the Sacramento Kings hits the deck. Light the beam. All right. Big Sacramento guy. The names have been changed, so fire away. The problem stems from my neighbor 4 houses away here in an older part of Sacramento. Tyler and Kristen were an unmarried middle-aged couple living down the road. Tyler's a very nice guy who does not work due to inheriting Silicon Valley money from his father years ago. I want Kyle. I would love that for you.
That would be
if
sick.
You were
just find out I actually am related to Michael Crichton. How about that? We just do that.
Fully blown younger Rich Kyle would be like one of my favorite characters ever. But all right, so this guy's got that kind of cash. He inherited from the father years ago, owns a house in the Bay Area, but currently rents it out as he's lived with Kristen here in Sacramento. Kristen works from home in a lucrative commercial real estate job. She generally sucks, and some of the neighbors have a difficult relationship with her as a result. I like this. Straight to the point. Kind of like the first take thing Will Cain was saying. Just start at that. Start at the conflict. I've always got along with her due to my ability to get along with most assholes. It's a gift. I think people, oddly enough, like the rough edge construction, home services, that kind of people, like you've interacted with so many different people that you probably learned a skill despite people thinking like you might not get along with everybody because of sometimes I feel like laborers get typecast as difficult people, and it's like in reality they probably are more conditioned to deal with so many different personalities because of their background. 8 months ago, Tyler and Kristen took an extended vacation. If you wanted a mini rant on the laborer personality. 8 months ago, Tyler and Kristen took an extended vacation in Colorado as they are outdoorsy types, and the terrain around the region was enticing to them. During this vacation, they employed my 12-year-old daughter to take care of their 2 socially awkward cats. Interesting description. Do you guys know a lot of non-socially awkward cats?
Yeah, they're out there. I know they exist. I just don't know how you get one like that. Like I don't know how you win the cat lottery to be fucking normal. I don't know how it works.
I have a cat. There's some days I don't even see it. Like
you do have a cat. I forgot about that.
Yeah, when I tell people, I forget that I have it half the time. He's pretty low maintenance.
What's his name?
Ollie.
That's a good cat.
Is it skateboarding?
Good dog
or
name too.
Oliver North?
It was just we got it. That was his name. We didn't change it. He's pretty chill. He just kind of hangs out. There are days where I just don't see him. As long as you feed him water, all that good, he's fine. Not a cat.
Yeah, that's the part about cat. Yeah, not a cat guy, but there is something to be said of an animal that's like, I don't need you right now. I'm surprised. People are probably surprised I don't have a cat.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about that anytime soon. All right, considering this couple has no children, they treated the cats as if they are children. My wife and I, along with our daughter, I had to go over to receive specific instructions on the care and maintenance of these cats while they're gone. They agreed to pay my daughter $10 per day to go over and feed, care, and spend time with the cats.
Your daughter's getting hosed, first of all.
Feels low. Yeah,
Check WAG, dude. It's gonna be $40 a day. Come on.
I think $10 is so low. We're all in agreement.
Yeah, that's
here.
That's $19.99 money. We're talking for like a chore like that. Come on.
It'd be one thing to just go over there and feed them, like to spend time and like play with them. That's what are we doing?
They probably think they're doing her a favor by like, they probably think very highly of the cats. They're just like, I don't know.
She's a CBA.
She's a union.
Yeah.
It's like, this is ridiculous. Let me see here. All right. So they agreed to pay my daughter $10 a day, feed, care, spend time, along with picking up the mail and packages. Upon returning from Colorado, the couple decided to start looking for homes as they fell in love with the area. Ultimately, Kristen bought a home that needed some work and began to make plans. The problem started when Kristen started fucking the electrician she hired and thus ending relationship with Tyler. Tyler returned to Sacramento brokenhearted, but made the best of it. He's continued to live in the house he shared with Kristen, who is actually the owner, because his house is currently rented in a long-term lease. Tyler now travels extensively and is frequently gone, which leaves us to the cats. You could do worse than banging an electrician, though. I've got like 2 plugs that don't work. My daughter, and thus my wife and I, are now the main caregivers to the cats. Tyler continues to pay my daughter whenever he is gone, and we dutifully send her over once a day to feed and give attention to the cats, along with cleaning the litter boxes and doing the occasional laundry, as the cats are sometimes incontinent. Recently, Kristen decided to show up at the home. We were excited to finally get the cats out of our lives, except she didn't take them back to Colorado with her. My question is, what do I do? We are generally tired of taking care of these cats, but our daughter has amassed a small fortune for a 12-year-old, literally over $1,000 so far in cash payments. Do we tell Tyler to figure something out? While he's truly a good and decent man, he does not care about the cats because they and the house are a reminder of his broken relationship. Do we continue to let him help fund my daughter's college fund and middle school lifestyle? I love middle school lifestyle. Fruit roll-ups on me.
Pog for
Damn,
everyone.
girl.
Who wants hot lunch?
Yeah. Like, what is that? 10 bands? Yep. All 10s. Do we try to contact Kristen and tell her to deal with the goddamn cats? Do we start stealing some of the better artwork and decor from the house out of spite? I'm joking, but they do have some sick antique stadium seats in the house that I would gladly take. Any advice would be appreciated. Shout out to Steve, Kyle, and Morgan. Go Ducks.
Damn.
Look, I think we've all agreed right now collectively on your behalf. We've been your own union here. You're going to go, hey, dude, this cat thing, kind of annoying. $50 a day. So is that then worth it to your daughter? Can you stomach it? $10 a day is nothing. You're right. That's 90s wages. That sounds like something when I would go over and like check on some dude's house when I was in high school. I'm like, we're going to pay you $10 a day, Buster.
Right.
I think you raise the price or he gets, look, when dudes are this devastated, they don't care about this stuff. This is the first thing they don't care about.
Yeah.
And again, to your point, they're not even his cats. But you know what? When I got dumped, the bank didn't stop sending me a mortgage statement. So, deal with your shit. And I think you go to him and say, this is brutal. She doesn't want to be there every day. It's turning into like a care thing. I understand you're going through a ton of stuff, but you need to come up with a solution that has something to and then, whatever. Fuck it, everything's got a price. And if he feels like he's being shook down in a time of despair, fuck it, man. Welcome to the world. So be like, and $10 is just low. Like $10 is fine. It was kind of like a neighborhood, daughter down the street thing, but it's turned into way more work. We're doing laundry. No one cares for the cats anymore. So maybe there's a number. Maybe there's a number. And he'll understand if he inherited all this money. His dad was a wheeler dealer, putting on Trump YouTube videos. Be like, one day, son. So yeah, you've got to get a bit aggressive with him to shake him out of his funk, because he will continue to do this day after day after day, cool. Because this because this is the least of his problems right now is this cat deal. and you were just a simple solution to it as he tries to work his way towards wherever the next chapter of his life takes him.
Yeah, I mean, you could even if it's not about the money and you're just like, listen, $1,000, that's impressive. You've this was a cool, remember that summer you made $1,000 or however long it's been, like, cool. But you could just be like, hey, my daughter's starting field hockey, or hey, she just got elected student government. Like, she's got other stuff going on. So I think, she's
got to bankroll her campaign too.
Yeah, like, I think we should start thinking about maybe alternatives, just putting it out there. Like, there's a thing coming up in her life that might make this a little bit more difficult. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I don't think this is going to work so much anymore. So, maybe on the weekends or something, but I think by and large we're going to have to find a new schedule, or you got to find a new way to do this. So
it's not like it's hard.
Put it that she's got something coming up that's going to make this more difficult, and that's not you digging. He might be like, all right, what about $25? Or he might be like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll get on that.
It's $25. Like, maybe he's interested. I don't know. Every day, just to do that. It depends on. It depends what the time is. I mean, the good thing for you is, I think what Kyle said is correct. Like, that's an easy excuse. Just, hey, she's busy, man. Like, she can't do this anymore. What's the guy going to do? And it's not like there aren't viable replacements. You mentioned there are multiple apps where you could just find somebody to do this. Who
you never have to speak
actually
to
want
anyone
to do this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any issue in you just being like, hey, dude, this can't be a long-term thing, even no matter what the price is. Like, I don't know what they're charging on like WAG or Rover or whatever for this. Maybe it's way more expensive and he doesn't want to do that. And maybe he thinks he's taking advantage of, he probably is, of the situation. But hey, man, that's his thing to figure out. I think you just say, hey, she's got friends, she's got a life, she's getting older. Like, she can't just be your personal cat person.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here right now.
WAG is serious.
It's
I did that
pet
once.
sitting prices on WAG vary by location, number of pets, the type of pet. For example, pet sitting typically costs $50 to $110 per night. So look, this guy understands tech. Look at his dad. Start pointing out some prices. You can give him the low end because it's not.
Yeah, but with dogs, it's a little different. Like, we did it for rabbits, and you just got to kind of get.
How much does that
water
cost?
Yeah, not great.
Rabbits should be more, right? Just because it sucks.
It sucks, but yeah, I think it was like,
a dog's fun.
Yeah, like we didn't. Either you can ask them to come in and spend time. You can ask them to just come in and put new food in, and then we just kind of did the bare minimum. With rabbits, it's like taking your 2-year-old to Disney World. They're not going to remember anyway. So just put the water in and whatever. Make sure the window's open. But
you find the receipt and it shows that your wife is like, "Will you read Alice in Wonderland to the rabbits?"
She has an insane laminated instruction thing that she leaves outside so the person can read all the things, and it's just like, and this one is a little more nice than that one, and this one is a little shy, and it's like, no one they're there to refill the water bowls. Come on,
survive, literally, just survive.
But yeah, if you're not asking them to spend time with them, like, there's different kinds of experiences, I guess. And the bottom rung is if it's just open the door, feed them, lock the door, that's like $30, and then you expect a tip, like with any of these things. So it'd be like $40 a day, and we have them come every other day. Maybe you should come every other day. I mean, do cats really even need somebody every day of the week? I don't think so.
10 is low. You're getting a host. Your daughter's getting a host.
Totally.
And you were trying to be nice. It was convenient. Something for the kid to do. Activity, saving money, learning about responsibilities, all those things. Triple it. At least.
Invested in DeepSeek. Just kidding. Listen to a lot of New York Times pods lately. All right.
Nice.
Good for you. I like that. Well-rounded.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, that'll do it for us today. Thanks to Wargon. Thanks to Kyle. And a big welcome back to Ceruti.
Thank you.
Normal schedule, I guess, this week. We're just going Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then I'm not doing trade with Bill because they're doing a special show Friday in LA. Okay. Yep. All right. So I'll do my trade recap stuff on Friday, which already started, obviously, with the huge news this weekend and then the De'Aaron Fox Spurs deal late on Sunday night. So check out our YouTube page. And as always, subscribe to the Ryen Russillo podcast where you Spotify.